Your article today is titled, "Let's Get Curious About Breathing and Anxiety." So what inspired you to write this article?
I have a lot of clients that just present with anxiety, and there are a number of other things going on in their lives, but anxiety tends to be one of those common things that most of my clients are wrestling with on some level. So, and this, just to be candid, this is my first opportunity to share with the MyCounselor.Online community. And so it just seemed to fit. Hey, this is something everyone wrestles with. So I figured I'd start with something pretty basic.
Yeah, and I think this is great. I mean, I've definitely struggled with anxiety. I felt like your article, I mean, we'll get into it, but had some great tidbits even for me. So when you wrote this though, like, did you have a specific audience in mind that you were hoping that this would reach, or do you think everyone can benefit from this?
I do think everyone can benefit on some level, right? There are going to be some people who are more familiar with breathing techniques and whatnot. So this probably isn't applicable to those folks. I mean, if you've been doing yoga your whole life, then yeah, this probably isn't going to apply. But for most folks, yeah, we really tend to not think about our breathing, and certainly how we're aware that when we get anxious or nervous or angry or whatever that hot emotion is, we notice that our breathing increases. But rarely do we take the initiative to think backwards, in a sense, that when we experience those hot emotions, we can calm ourselves through our breathing. That's not as intuitive. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I can attest to that. I feel like for a long time, I've been told to do more yoga to deal with a lot of my breathing and stuff. And so, yeah, this was really great, like diving into it. And in your article, you talk about the effect that breathing has, like literally how it can change your anxiety. So what practical tips can you give to someone who wants to incorporate breathing to help reduce their anxiety?
Yeah, probably the most practical thing is to practice. Practice when you are calm and you don't have anything else on your plate. A lot of times when folks present, I'll encourage them to pick 3 times during the day to sit down and be very intentional about practicing. And the idea, very simply, I have a military background. We do a lot of training in the military, and the reason is so that when the emotions are present, when everything is going bad around us, we don't have to think about it, right? Because we've already practiced it over and over and over again. And that's the idea. Practice it when you're calm and when you can think through, oh, that didn't really work. So that when emotionally those emotions are hot, you don't have to think about it. It's something that you've practiced so frequently, it just, oh, that's right. Here we go. Let's step into that breath work. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I really love that explanation. I feel like sometimes you can feel like I feel like I'm just breathing. This is dumb. Like, is it really helping or changing anything? But I think you're right. It's supposed to be like that second nature. Like, that's a really great analogy. Like in the military, like they're doing all these things that may or may not happen, but it's so that when that happens, you're ready. You don't have to like think about the next step. Your body will just take over. I know in your article you mentioned like 4 different like changes to do your breathing. Do you mind like kind of going through those 4 different ones?
Yeah, first one is just slowing your breathing, and I've already referenced that a little bit, but very simply, the idea is that our body works in reverse sometimes. In other words, if I am anxious, my just kind of stepping into and slowing my breathing will help me relax and calm. So slowing your breathing, being intentional about that. And you asked the 4: slowing, sighing, speaking, and singing. So the sighing is a way to reset our breath rate. And it's very simply being intentional about just taking that sigh. It really does kind of reset things physiologically in our bodies. And I would just encourage you, I think I made a clever reference. Make sure you let your loved ones know around you that what you're doing, because that can communicate something you don't intend, right? The third one is speaking. I love the voiceover artists with that really deep and resonant voice, and right, and but find somebody that really helps you to relax, or on the one hand. On the other hand, practice your own speaking so that you can tap into that calmness in your own voice, and you can hear that anxiety. And as you slow your speaking, as you lower your tempo, you can feel yourself calming down. So there's an affirming component to that as well. And then finally is singing. And there's a lot going on there. And as believers, as Christians, understanding that singing is a primary component to worship. I think that's the spiritual component, but just the way that God designed us. He designed us in such a way that when we change the rhythm of our voice, the rhythm of our breathing, he wired us in such a way that helps to balance our emotional state. So those are the four.
Yeah, that was great. Actually, yeah. So a couple of things. Like one, I actually have started something one of my counselors is having me do is something called like radical acceptance, where I speak out loud, like what's going on around me when I'm feeling really anxious. And it's funny because I didn't think about it, but when I read your article and it was like speaking, and I was like, oh, it's so true. Because as I'm speaking, I'm realizing I'm having to like slow down how I'm talking. I'm listening to my own voice, which my husband says puts him to, like, in a nice way, puts him to sleep at night when I'm talking. So I'm like, okay, like, I guess that is one of those things that actually, whether or not I didn't realize that though, but I think speaking out loud, my brain is maybe recognizing like, oh, okay, like we can calm down. Like, so I thought that was really neat. And the second thing, which I don't know if we mentioned at the beginning, but the unique thing about breathing, which you pointed out, is that it's both voluntary and involuntary. Like, what is that? I mean, like, is there any other parts of the body that are like that, or why do you think our lungs are like that?
That's a great question. And there's a lot in that quite honestly, I'm still researching and trying to in my own way, kind of discover, God, what did you have? What's your purpose here? Why is this so unique in our bodies? That we can affect, like heart rate, we can affect our heart rate on some level, but it is, it's not an easy thing to do. And it takes a lot of very deliberate practice in order to do so. But breath rate, it's as simple as any child who is mindful of it can change their breath rate. Yeah. So, I'm not sure I answered your question, but no, it is unique in our physiology, and there's something fascinating about it. And I think the way that it is tied to our emotional state, that it's intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it was intriguing, and just even realizing that it's one of the only body parts that you're right, like we can breathe, that's involuntary, and then kind of like all these techniques are all the voluntary techniques to like change our emotional state. So there's so much to go into this. I'm so excited that you've like even brought up this topic to dive into. Like, I'm pumped for it. But what final piece of advice would you give to people who are watching this and they're like just really wanting to like figure this out?
Yeah, this is a little bit of an off topic, but another thing that I bring into play when I'm talking about calming and anxiety is the idea of a calm place. So utilizing and visualizing that calm place in conjunction with your voice. And whether that is making your own voice tape, describing walking into that calm place. If I could show you my painting in my office, it's a cowboy up in the mountains. I love backpacking. I love being in the mountains, and the rain is coming down and dripping off of his cowboy hat. And I just visualize myself walking in that place, and I engage all five senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I taste? What do I smell? And then what do I feel? And as I do that, you really engage that creative aspect of your mind. And it, in a very real sense, it captures your mind and takes it away from that thing that may be anxiety provoking. So, but one of the best ways to do that is couple that with voice, with speaking. So kind of talk your way through it.